My first band practice.
And I made everyone close their eyes because I was too embarrassed to sing it with them looking at me.
And we never played a show, and I think we maybe had like 2 other band practices after that.
If I knew that someone even had a guitar at their house, I would suggest that they be in a band with me.
And I'm sure we were sounding horrible. First band practice ever was, I think I was 10 years old. I think it was in my room. We met this girl that could play guitar. We called her Peppermint Patty because she had freckles and red hair. And my buddy, John Davison, who's the singer in Yes now, was playing, I believe, bass, maybe. And I think that we were trying to learn either What I Like About You by the Romantics or maybe Save It for Later by the English Beat. And I'm sure we were sounding horrible.
You have to understand that a big part of my childhood was spent trying to convince other people to be in a band with me. If I knew that someone even had a guitar at their house, I would suggest that they be in a band with me. So there were many early band practices that were essentially a bunch of people who didn't know how to play an instrument, just sort of sitting in a garage for a couple hours until ultimately everybody left. But I remember by the time I finally had like a band of people that were playing, we would play in my garage. And one of those times I remember writing a song, which was essentially, I was on drums for some reason and singing, and there was like a guitar riff, and it was just the most derivative of like a doo-wop song, misfitsy doo-wop song, and it was called like Dead Girlfriend or something, and it was about a zombie girl, very misfitsy, directly ripped off of the Misfits. And there was no changes in the song. It was one riff and one drum pattern and essentially one melody for the entirety until it just ended. And I remember I played it for my dad, and he was not impressed. And I thought, well, maybe I should try harder on this. Turns out I don't have the magic touch of just the first song I ever wrote was the greatest thing ever. But that was actually really good because it made me think harder about my interest in songwriting and wanting to really improve my chops and to be able to write something that was listenable at the end of the day.
First band practice with Simple Plan was an interesting one because Chuck, the drummer, and I had a band previously to that one. We had a band for 7 years before that, but when we started Simple Plan, it was very interesting because I came into the band and they already had a couple of songs. So it was the first time in my life that I came into a band practice and listened to the band play a few songs, and I was like, oh, this is cool. I could jam with this. So it was at Chuck's parents' basement in Montreal. It was very loud, and his parents were not too stoked about it, but they weren't stoked about it for about 10 years, and they were still okay with it. But yeah, super fun, basement, jam practice. I knew all the guys because they were all friends from high school, so as far as meeting people, it was very simple. But yeah, good old basement band practice.
My first band practice was in a garage in the middle of the desert in the town that I grew up in called Ridgecrest, and we covered Bad Religion and The Cure. That was my first band practice.
First ever band practice I ever had was I was maybe around 11. I had met this kid at Little League. His name was Matt, and he played guitar and I played guitar, but he found out that I had a drum set, so he was like, all right, you have to play drums. And so I did. I played drums. We wrote a song. We named the band Fountainhead, and we wrote it on the drum head, and we never played a show, and I think we maybe had like 2 other band practices after that, but I forever had Fountainhead written on a drum head. Yeah.
Man, that's hard to remember because I've been doing that stuff since I was like 15, and I think it was... Yeah, at a friend's house, me and 3 other friends. The first official band practice, I think we spent 3 hours learning Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. And I don't think we ever nailed it, but we sure did try, though.
My first ever band practice was like 2 bands before Parkway. And it was in like what is the equivalent of an Australian basement, which wasn't even a room. Like one of the walls was literally dirt. With Luke in his first band, screaming through a mic, which was then put through a bass PA instead of a full PA. It was just going through a bass cab, and it was sweaty and it sounded like shit. But if your first band doesn't sound like shit, then you probably doing it wrong.
My first ever band practice, I was in my best girlfriend at the time, Stephanie G's bedroom in Garden Grove, and it was just me and her, because her and I were going to sing together, and then the guitar player of the band I was auditioning for, and I sang Safe Ferris. What's the name of the song? I don't remember this song. I sang a Safe Ferris song, and I made everyone close their eyes because I was too embarrassed to sing it with them looking at me. So everyone had to close their eyes.
I think my first band practice was probably with the guy I started the band with a long time ago named Jeremy. And I went over his house, and I was playing all these like Blink and Goldfinger songs. I couldn't believe that he knew how to play them on the drums. So that was a cool experience.
My first ever band practice, I remember I was playing drums, and it was really just like a bunch of kids from school that had guitars, but none of us really knew how to play any songs. So we worked up the intro to Heaven's on Fire by Kiss, and I think that's about all we knew for about a year and a half.
Yeah, my first band practice is pretty similar. We would just work up like Helmet songs or something like that, and it was probably until like our third or fifth, somewhere in there, practice that we figured out that not only are the guitars supposed to be in tune, they're supposed to be in tune with each other.
Well, it was probably just in the living room of my flat with acoustic guitars. And every kind of practice that followed would be to like audition Foley or audition our future bassist and all this kind of stuff. It happened very, very slowly and gradually. But yeah, no, it was probably just acoustics in my flat.
First practice for me was out in... It was kind of unconventional because we did a lot of work over Skype and over videos together, me and Patty, prepping me to get ready. And then I had the first practice out in California. And I just remember Ben being pretty nervous because he was like, oh, you know, like the band didn't know if I could play lead guitar very well. They just knew that they liked me enough to give it a go. And then it turns out I could, and Ben was just sitting there with his fingernails going like this, like, oh shit, he can actually play lead guitar. Okay, this is great. So yeah, it went over pretty well. After they found out that I could, in fact, play the lead guitar.
Well, my first band existed when I was like 11 or 12. And I got into this room, and our drummer played a really bad beat on, I almost said on guitar, on drums. And then the other guitarist like started playing something, and then I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know how to jam. I still don't know how to jam, so all I did was play Smoke on the Water over and over the whatever riff they were playing, and it was just out of key and bad and just
That just sounds like our soundcheck, to be fair.
Pretty much.
But now that you brought that up, no one knows the name of this band, and we've been trying to work out the name, and you never tell us because it's still online somewhere.
Yes.
And you won't tell us what it is.
We have like demos, like when we were literally 13 or 14, that we recorded, and they're still online somewhere, and we forgot the password to log into the
Internet,
thing.
do your thing.
Our first ever band practice, I think, was in the cafeteria. Yeah, so it was in this cafeteria of the place that my dad worked. It was like after hours, so we like moved all the chairs aside and set up a PA and plugged in our shitty amps. And what did I have? What did I have?
I don't know.
You had a crate?
I don't even know if I had that at that point. Yeah, I have no idea.
I think
what
you
we
had a
played
crate.
for. Really? Already then? Because I feel like I went out and bought the crate, like, like after the fact. Like I was like, okay, I'm in a band. I need a real amp now.
Oh, did I have a 900?
I think you might have had a Marshall.
I had that 900 that I did not like, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, yeah, it was just everyone was playing through Metal Zone pedals.
Mm-hmm.
Even Ed, right?
Probably.
Everyone's guitar sounded like kazoos.
Originally, the band was formed by Daniel, Chris, and James, and I think they worked out of James's parents' house. And they had one song like tracked with one microphone, and the singer originally wasn't around, or he didn't have a car, so he couldn't make band practice. But I really liked the song they had, and I was buddies with those guys. They were trying out this one singer and he wouldn't do anything at the band practice. So I just stepped in and did the song that they had, and then they asked me to join the band. So I don't know if that qualifies. I guess that qualifies as my first band practice. 14 years later, here we are.
First, I would say jam session, not really like technically a band practice. When I met Isaac, because our bass player Kevin had been like playing with him a little bit, and I went to elementary school, middle school, and high school with Kevin. So he was like, "Hey, come hang out, meet this kid that plays guitar." And Isaac was like 13 or 14 at the time, and I went over there and met him, and it was fine. But I remember when I left, I was like, yeah, I don't think that's going to work out. He's too metal. But, yeah, I ended up giving it another chance, and, like, here we are. So.
Well, the first Mayday Parade band practice was a secret band practice because it was, Mayday Parade formed from 2 local bands from Tallahassee that kind of split, took 3 from one band and 3 from another, and came together, and we were all friends, and we played shows together. It was a band called Defining Moment, a band called Kid Named Chicago. We played shows together, and we practiced in the same warehouse. There were a bunch of bands in Tallahassee that all sort of rented out this warehouse and just scheduled different times to rehearse, and so we kind of got together as like a secret meeting without the rest of them folks on our other bands knowing, to like try, because we had talked about this for a little while about like, I remember talking to Cabbage and Jake and a few of the guys, and like, hey, like, what do you guys think about maybe just for fun taking, and once we kind of gauged the interest and we talked about it, we figured we'd try it out, and we wrote 3 Cheers for 5 years and practiced that a couple times, and it just kind of clicked. It was like, well, there were so many things. One, it was always really hard for us. Brooks and I were always in bands together. It was always really hard to find like an amazing drummer, and Jake was like the first.
Yeah, that was the big issue with us for sure.
Yeah, that was such a difficult thing. Was like we'd always played in bands with our friends and stuff, and like they were, like they could play a little bit of drums, but to really like you'd see bands that had just those amazing drummers. And
well, our drummer had quit too right before we were going to start touring.
Right.
We wanted to go to school, and then we couldn't find a drummer, and then I was trying to fill in that spot instead of playing guitar because it was easier to find a guitarist.
Right.
And it turned into a big debacle.
Yeah, and so that was a key thing for sure, and then just all of it. It was just kind of like everyone was really good at what they did, and we were all passionate about playing music, and all took it seriously, and it kind of felt like we'd finally, just found, because that's really like what so much of it was. Like I feel like when Brooks and I met, we were in middle school and wanted to take it very playing music. We took it very seriously, and it was kind of hard to find dudes that were like as serious about it as we were. Dudes
who wanted to take the risk, to go out on the road, or even put in the work. Not even as much as the risk, but putting in the work, or knowing how to put in the work.
Yeah. And so that was just kind of and then I think the next day after that practice is when we sort of had to have the talk and break up our other bands, which was really sad, and it was awful, and I hated it, but we kind of had to do it to move forward. And then just the first band practice we ever had, the day that I met Brooks, he came over to my house, and we had a band practice in my garage. And he brought his guitar over, and I guess Ben Woodson.
We rode he played drums, and we rode the bus together, and it's like, oh yeah, come over, play.
And so we and I didn't even have a microphone stand, so I taped a microphone to a broom
over the riding lawnmower.
Leaned up against the riding lawnmower, and I forget, we probably just played a couple of covers. I think we probably played Oasis, Wonderwall, and like some Bush songs or something, and that was our first ever band practice.